Welcome to the Au Jus. I'm your host, Beefloaf. This show is being powered by From the 108 and FromThe108.com, where you can get all of our content, top to bottom, blogs, podcasts, and videos, including the world-famous Sunday Soak. You can also get all of our merch there as well, including the infamous Wave Sucks and hashtag 108 Garbs. Currently, we are selling a Wave Sucks beanie at FromThe108.com. They're $23, they're perfect for winter, and they are Jeff Passan approved. This show is powered by you, the loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid. And that's how we continue to make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest... For his third week in a row, he'll join me to close out the final installment of the White Sox Trades with Every Team series. Chorizy-E, welcome back to the Au Jus, my friend.
What's up, Beef? I can't help it, man. I can't help it. Every time that you're doing your intro, and you say that's how we get paid, I always expect you to after that say, and that's how we get laid. Like I don't know why. Like it's just like it feels like it should just roll out. Like if I was doing that intro, I would mess it up like at least once a month.
I should write it in there. I actually generally try to read off my paper, but I stop reading right there because I got to go over and do noises and do different stuff. So I'm not kind of paying attention to it. I should write it in and start tricking the audience a little bit on that intro. You know, until we sell some ads, like real ads on here, maybe I'll start playing with that until we get that going. So thanks for coming back. We got two divisions left to go, AL East, NL Central. Just a quick reminder to the group. The reason why we started doing this, and I'll put the image up on the screen for the YouTube viewers, I thought about a discussion with longtime poker professional Phil Ivey. An interviewer asked Phil, how do you recommend getting better the fastest? And Phil basically said, buy into a game at lower stakes than you would play and play every single hand for an hour and try to figure out how you would play all those different hands from different positions and situations that you're taught not to do. So that's what we kind of have done with the White Sox for 4 years running. Make trades with every team, even if the fits aren't necessarily great. It's our way of kind of working through this roster, understanding what's out there for these other teams. And so back at it again, closing out the fourth year in a row. And we've got AL East first, and then we'll finish up with NL Central. Chorizy, I thought this was maybe the most fun. There was a couple difficult ones in here, but this is probably the most fun set of divisions, in my opinion.
This was the most difficult of them because I think where you like so there's teams that are like they're not going to compete or probably not going to compete the following year, and so those are usually pretty easy to make trades with. Where it's difficult to make trades is with a team that really underperformed. And they're going to try and go for it this year.
Right.
Because, like, you don't match up with them a lot, especially when you're the Sox. Who the Sox, like everybody's like, I need starting pitching. It's like, we got one.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You know, we got some other guys that are high risk, high reward. Those are easier to trade off to somebody who's not really going for it. But it's been interesting. And so I think some of these are a little like, okay, well, I don't know who either of these guys are. And then some of these are like, well, if we're going to trade, we got to trade this guy.
Yeah, I felt like we took a bunch of chances in this one. And there's going to be some in here where people are going to be like, that trade will never fucking happen. But, you're forced into doing every single team. So, let's get on with it. The first trade, and it will start in AL East, and this is my trade, is with the Tampa Rays. And the White Sox are sending a farmhand Ryan Burroughs is a shortstop to the Tampa Rays for left-handed pitcher Ian Seymour and center fielder. I put that lightly because he's an outfielder. I'm not sure he ends up staying in center. That's Cameron Misner. Now, the thesis here is that oftentimes the Rays have so many guys that they can't protect in their 40-man that they have a need to kind of dish off some of these players or they're letting them walk for free. And the White Sox have not been in a spot where they decided, hey, we're going to try to make a deal with a team like this, send them an actual prospect, but in return get two guys back that they can't fit on their 40-man roster. The White Sox 40-man right now is at 35. They're going to make some decisions coming up. There's a couple guys they'll probably protect, and that's Christian Mena and Jake Eater. But realistically, they could cut about 10 more guys off it. So they got a lot of room to throw guys on there, whereas the Rays in this situation with Seymour, Seymour is kind of a close to the majors starting pitcher. And he needs 40-man protection. He's Rule 5 eligible. The White Sox can give him that protection, give him some time to ramp up this year in AAA, and then make good on the roster. This would be a tough keep for the Rays to hold on to Seymour. And Misner is another as an example of the same thing, but on the position player side, not quite ready for the majors. Kind of fringy in center, a lot of power, but also a lot of swing and miss. Someone that probably needs to spend some time in the minors, maybe one more year. But the Rays just don't have the ability to put these types of guys all the time on the 40-man. The Sox got a shit ton of room. So I flipped a little trade like this. Ryan Burroughs is a real prospect. I mean, he's a young guy. He's liked. He's kind of just at the periphery of the top 10 of the White Sox prospects. So he's definitely tradable. Teams would want him. Chorizy, what do you think?
I like this. I like trading the guys who are kind of early in the system. Sometimes that doesn't work out, Tatis. But there's
you fuck that up occasionally.
But a lot of the times that person just never even makes it to the pros. And to trade them off for somebody who's closer, I mean, like you could see Misner playing in Chicago if things are going poorly next year. You're just like, let's see what this guy's got, and we just play him at a bunch of different outfield positions, see if he can stick in center. I'm always more into a player if they're up the middle originally.
Yeah.
Right? Like if they're a shortstop or a center fielder, there's a lot more optionality as to where they can be on the field. As opposed to like a guy where you go like, well, this guy's a first baseman, probably a DH, and it's like, well, if the bat doesn't stick, he's worthless. So
he sucks. I mean, I agree with you, Trees, and it's not something the White Sox focused on during the last rebuild. They screwed that up 9 ways to Tuesday. We have focused on that in this trade, series, trying to find those guys. Even if you don't think they'll stick in center, they're going to play a good right field. They'll play a good left field, and so they can move around and actually have some optionality on the defensive side.
And on the other side, left-handed pitchers, I feel like left-handed pitchers are valuable in a similar way, right? Like most left-handed pitchers pitch until they're 74 years old. That's one of my favorite things on MLB Trade Rumors is to look at the free agents. And when you get to like left-handed relievers, like there's always a guy who's like pushing 50.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's like, oh, this guy still isn't retired. He's 47 years old.
Well, and Seymour fits this because Seymour has a really good changeup. And a lot of times the good changeup guys can last a long time. He doesn't have a bad fastball necessarily. He's not like some of the prospects earlier in this thing where I'm like, these guys are throwing high 80s. Like we're hoping that you can get like 4 innings out of this guy at the back. No, this guy is a real starter. He's probably going to be a real starter. Just needs a little more time to build up because he had Tommy John surgery. So, so that's our race trade. I think the White Sox in the situations where you have rosters, teams that are great at developing, and the White Sox haven't been great at developing, they should look into trades like this. Cleveland is an example where they usually have shit pouring off their 40-man. The Yankees, Dodgers, look for that excess and say, hey, can we grab a couple of those people and see if we can get any of these people to pan out? Because they need to really throw like mass kind of at the 40-man roster and see what sticks. So, Teresa, you're up next with your Yankees trade.
Yeah, so this was an interesting team to trade with because the Yankees definitely have some glaring holes, and the glaring holes are in the outfield. But there wasn't a good match. You can try and trade Luis Robert, but you'd want a monster haul for Luis Robert. Yeah. And you probably end up wanting less for Luis Robert than the Padres want for Juan Soto, who they are hard pressed to get rid of.
Right.
And so you got to think that they're going to go that route. And you got to think that there's already talks about Torres for Verdugo in some trades. Like, obviously that's not a 1-for-1, but like those types of things make it tough to go, I'm going to push Andrew Benintendi over here. Right. They have other options in that scenario. So what I was thinking was, what do they have too much of maybe? And so they have a lot of catchers. So when Trevino got hurt last year, they brought up a couple guys. Both of them are pretty high ranked in their system. They ended up giving Austin Wells a lot more of the opportunity there. In just 158 innings, he racked up -2 defensive runs saved.
Promise. That sounds like a White Sox catcher already.
That's bad. But the bat looks legit. And I know the Sox are trying to get better on defense, but man, they don't have much in terms of hitting. And so a guy who can hit the ball and can pretend to be a catcher half the time, I think that's worth going after. And if we had anyone to compare to say like what could a bat first guy go for? I think that we know that Jake Eater's that price.
That's exactly.
And I think one of the things too is like the Yankees will end up in a position where they probably offload some of their stronger positions for some minor league help, because if they do go after Soto, if they do go after any other outfielders in the trade market, they're going to start to empty out that minor league system. Yeah. And one of their top prospects had Tommy John, he's an outfielder, so the recovery time is probably quicker. But like, that's still like, you're really getting a barren system at that point. And so I think that giving them a pitcher, especially a left-handed pitcher that could start to add to their minor league system, I think they would go for something like that.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed here, and you filled it in nicely with this trade in particular. Chris Getz said we had a poorly built roster, and they have. The White Sox have had mismatched parts all over the place. Having one of the catchers be a guy who's a good hitter would be extremely helpful. Like, if you're going to have a position share, which catcher always is in some capacity, having one of them that is a bat first guy is totally nice and reasonable, and someone you could slide over to DH or first base in a pinch, or kind of like get some utility out of the player instead of having all these guys that do the exact same thing. So there's no good roster.
Well, let's say it's Corey Lee, who's they seem to like him. Let's say he's our number one.
We know he can't hit.
He ain't batting at the end of the game. All right, like Austin Wells is batting at the end of the game if we got him.
Drew Boggs says, love Austin Wells. Well, I didn't know there was some Austin Wells lovers out there.
Right.
And then our guy Prez says, Mancada to the Cubs are right. You slow down. We'll get to the Cubs in the back half of the show. Just take it easy. And then Jackie says, hi, fellas, have a show. Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate that. We will have a show. All right.
To Prez, I was not waving away your suggestion. Yeah. There's a tiny fly that's around. And I keep
You're going to get knocked out of your chair trying
to
hit it, I think.
I told Beef before we started, there's only two things that can happen here. Is either I end up knocking over the wine glass and bottle trying to kill this thing, or it gets in the wine and I just drink it. Those are the only two things that are going to happen. I don't know why I even tried to wave it away.
But I like Austin Wells. A lot of slug there. I think the price there is steep, but, I mean, you might be in a spot where that kind of is the case. Hey, risky upside guy, you're going to have to take a chance. The White Sox will have to divest of some stuff in order to really fill out all these parts eventually. So I liked it. Let's gamble here. Next up is the Orioles, and I did this one. You traded Dylan Cease last time. I said, fuck you. I want to trade Dylan Cease this time.
We're not done even after this one.
So here's my trade of Dylan Cease. I send Cease to the Orioles for Joey Ortiz, who's a shortstop, Dylan Beavers, a right fielder, and Trace Bright, a right-handed pitcher. Tracy, one thing that caught me about your trade when you did it with the Astros, it had me more thinking about the bar that was originally set of, Dylan Cease should get back what Luis Castillo got back in that trade with the Mariners over a year ago. And I kept thinking more about your trade and thinking, no, Cease doesn't have the proven track record that Castillo has with regards to upside. He's been a durable guy, but he has the size Cease year. And then he comes back this past year, and he was very mediocre. I mean, depending on if you look at Fangraphs versus Baseball Reference, there's a wide swath in how much WAR the guy is worth. But, I mean, mediocre ERA, lots and lots of walks. The innings, he didn't really get to the innings. So it got to me thinking, like, okay, there are teams who would still barrel for you, but you're not getting as much as Luis Castillo got. So in this instance right here, I got Joey Ortiz, who's definitely a top 100 prospect. Glove for a shortstop. He's the type of guy who the defense would carry this thing, so you don't really have to worry so much about the bat. He has no power, so he's like a contact first shortstop when it comes to at the plate. Dylan Beavers is probably a more like kind of complete right fielder and would be very helpful. He's in Double-A still, so there's a little bit of a time there. There's like a tremendous power ceiling here that he's not gotten to yet, but he's a good defender in right field. Hits kind of enough. Not a superstar, but the potential to become one. And then Trace Bright is just a guy who just throws real hard. This probably ends up being a reliever. But in my instance here, like you got two guys who I think are fits, position player fits. If you would have asked me 2 months ago, this feels light. After you did the Astros trade and we talked about it, to me this feels more on point with what I think we'd get from the Orioles.
I like it. I like it, and so not spoiler alert, I trade Dylan Cease later too. And
One more time.
I think it was a similar package to this, Beef, where you are getting someone who's a top 100 prospect.
Yep.
But also you're getting a couple question marks, right? Like I like the Trace Bright thing. I think if I'm making trades and like I'm not gonna let the tough time we've had with Michael Kopech stop me from going, I want the guy that throws real hard and is a physical marvel.
Yes.
Like,
let's try it again.
We'll see if we can make it work.
That's right.
Like I would rather have that every time. So like I'm always going to go for that. So I like the idea there. And you know what, the glove for a shortstop, like let's see. Let's see what there's value in defense. And I think that's something that the Sox are trying to do.
Yep.
And that's how they're trying to turn the ship around really quickly. And Beef, you and I talked about this over a couple hundred drinks on Saturday.
Yes,
is that is probably the quickest way to turn something around. But you made the point.
Right.
It's also got the lowest ceiling.
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
It's like you could become an 85-win team pretty quickly, but you can't become a 90-win team.
Yeah, I think we'll flush this out more during the offseason, but we're on the same page with regards to, improving the defense can take you from 61 wins to 78 pretty quick. Like we'll pop up and be like, man, Chris Getz is doing a great job. But going from 78 to 90 is a huge leap, and like it would take a lot more. And like this guy, I wouldn't trust him to be qualified for this yet. Maybe we get lucky. We'll actually see. So
we got a couple of comments I want to bring up here.
Yeah, go ahead, pop those up there.
Tim Meyer with the Dylan Beaver's future fixture of White Sox or porn star segments, and John Nava with the same comment. These came in like exactly the same time. Like the timestamps are incredibly close. I love it.
Absolutely.
But I think we got a drink.
We do. John Nava says, I'll pop that up. He says, I love these type of shows. Cheers, fellas. Thank you, John. Appreciate the drink. That is how we get paid here, so I appreciate you. We love bringing these type of shows. They are a lot of fucking work, but they are a lot of fun for us to do. So, all right, the next trade up is actually the Red Sox, and this is you, Chorizy.
Man, I had a real tough time.
This looked like the hardest team out of the
Sox.
two divisions, in my opinion. The Red Sox. I looked at it too. I was like, I don't know what the fuck to do.
It was funny because there was a point yesterday. I'm sitting there because this was like one of the last ones I did because I was just having a lot of trouble with it. And there was a point yesterday where I was like, can the Sox get involved in the Verdugo-Torres trade? Like, can we make this a three-way trade?
Get in the middle there. Yeah.
And how do we get Austin Wells? And so, but what I ended up landing on is if that trade happened, Luis Urias doesn't move around to other positions that well. He's kind of stuck at second base. You could maybe play him at third, something like that.
Yeah, he's kind of board locked at second.
He doesn't have the arm for third, so he's a second baseman. And the guy gets on base like 33% of the time. Yep. That's a huge get for the White Sox. A guy who can play second base and get on base. Like we haven't seen that in a while. So this is the kind of trade that I was looking for. And so the Red Sox had just traded for Urias not too long ago, and I think they traded Bradley Blaylock. He's similar. He's right-handed, but he's similar to a Kai Busch in upside and in prospect rank and all that. So I figured Kai Busch would be a nice one. And again, I'm going with the idea of like everyone is always going to want left-handed pitching.
Right.
This is it's an easy sell. And so I think if we did something like that, I don't think I'm that attached to Kai Busch at this point that I would worry about him going somewhere else. And Luis Urias helps you right away. And if he's not going to be helping the Red Sox, they might be willing to do something like this, especially if the Verdugo-Torres trade starts to dig into their prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that trade right there because that hits a sweet spot that we've kind of been hitting in this trade series, in my opinion, is that where a lot of teams look at the board-locked second baseman that has a decent bat, on-base percentage, and can a little bit of pop and all that stuff, they look at that as like, shit, we ended up with this. The White Sox have been so bad in that spot. It's like, we could use that, and that would be a huge upgrade for us. Like, the same thing with the shifty outfielder that can kind of play a little bit of center, but definitely can play right and left and has some pop. And it's like, most teams are like, I don't know, we got a few of those guys. And the White Sox are like, we have none of these on the 40-man roster. Can you please send it here? So, like, those are, like, to me, the easiest fits. And so, like, I love seeing a one like this because, like, you plug him in tomorrow, that's like a 2 to 3 win upgrade immediately. And it's like we got him for a reasonable prospect, not a reasonable left-handed pitching prospect. But yeah, I mean, really, the Sox are only going to be able to do that kind of once because once you fill it, you fill it.
Yeah.
But that's like just an easy like value grab that the White Sox should be doing because a lot of people have those. You don't have one. It's not going to be hard for you to get it. So go get it, fill the spot in, add 2 to 3 wins to the roster, and go. And so I love this one, and I love the Rice. He's the bat's right there for you. I mean that's what I need. I need that on my roster. I need a lot of bats like that. I did the video
Mexico
with
too,
Vaughn.
baby. Team Mexico.
Yes, that's right. He's our national team. I did that video with Vaughn, and Vaughn's OPS plus or WRC plus or whatever, and how it's stacked up on the various playoff teams. And you see how rough it is. You need guys who just like league average plus would be great at any of these positions that we're just haven't been getting that. We're just been getting, absolutely huge holes in these spots. So I love trades like this. One of my favorites. So, all right, last one of this division. And this is the one where people in the comments are going to say, Beef, you're a fucking idiot. This will never happen. So I'll try to explain it the best I can. And I'll be honest. Maybe I am a fucking idiot and maybe this would never happen. But I have the White Sox sending Andrew Vaughn, Gregory Santos, and Garrett Crochet to the Blue Jays for Vlad Guerrero Jr. Okay, let me explain this, okay? We all think of Vladito, as a superstar or whatever. Vladito last year sucked, for lack of a better term. He was worth one F4, okay? He's hitting way too many ground balls. He still has a ton of power. He hits the shit out of the ball. He's really not a first baseman at this point. He's kind of just a DH. He's overweight. I mean, I have a picture in the blog where it's from an article where it says he lost like 20 pounds and he looks like a fat slob in it. I mean, I'm a fat slob and he looks kind of like me. I'm a little darker during the summer or whatever. But my thought was this, like the Jays need a lot of stuff. Like they have the building blocks of a very good team, but they lost Matt Chapman, so they need a third baseman. They lost Whit Merrifield, they need a second baseman. Their bullpen was atrocious. Chorizy, when we were in Toronto, when we were talking to the season ticket holders, they were so pissed off about how bad their fucking bullpen is.
And so it was on display that day.
Oh, yeah, and they blew a big lead that day in front of us to just show us how fucking bad the bullpen was. So, like, to me, you give them kind of like 2 of our ace relievers under control, cheap guys. I'm sending Andrew Vaughn back. He's not as good a hitter as Vladito, or hasn't shown he is yet. He's a better defender at first base than he is. And they relieve the money. Vlad is expected to get his ARB raise. He's an ARB 3, and he was a Super 2, so he'll have ARB 4 next year. He's expected to get $18.3 million. The guys I'm sending back are expected to, they'll cover 3 spots, and they'll get like $6 million maybe, or $5 million all in. So you're getting a nice haircut there. You can go spend the money elsewhere, starting pitching, additional relievers, the position players that you're missing. This might be a totally insane trade, but the more I looked at it, the more I thought, why not? And the White Sox need star power. The White Sox are shitting their pants. Every PR opportunity they get, they crap themselves. So getting a name in here, even if the guy's not that great, or maybe he's a diminished version of what we thought he was going to be, is a huge win for them, no matter what you got to give up. Chorizy, am I nuts?
No, you're not nuts. I don't think that's an insane trade. I mean, like, that is giving up quite a few guys. I think Vlad is such a kind of a star there. Like, people love him. That it would be tough to sell to the fan base, but like, I don't know, it could really improve them. And God, that bullpen was terrible. Like, I remember going to that game and we're like, oh, this is in hand, and everyone around us is like, no, it's not.
No, it's not. And they were up like 5.
Yeah. And like, they were up 5 early. Like, it looked like a blowout.
They were so nervous, and then they blew the lead, of course. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, I just sort of thought, like, Garrett, I'm surprised we haven't traded Garrett Crochet more. I know he's coming off of injury and everything, but, like, he's sort of an enigma where, like, he's the type of guy who, like, give you 70 ridiculous innings, possibly next year out of a bullpen, or he give you almost nothing. I don't know what he is, but when he has pitched out of the bullpen, he's been real nice. I don't know how healthy he can actually stay. So this was just, to me, an outside-the-box idea. Maybe it would never happen.
I probably would have got crazier with this. I probably would have included Moncada and then saw if the Blue Jays had any albatross contract that they wanted to send back.
Yeah.
Because filling third base is definitely a need for them. But overall, man, I could see it. I'd be surprised if it happened. I'd be kind of like utterly shocked if this went down. But it makes sense on paper.
Oh. We have a super chat from a guy claiming to be My Sox Summer. I'm not sure he figured out how to do super chats, so I'll say I think it might be him, but he says you guys rock. Thank you, My Sox Summer. All right, we're done with the AL East. It is now time to move over to the NL Central. And my trade is up first, and then once my trade's done, you got the last 4. I appreciate you doing as many as you did from this round because I got a little cocked up with some stuff I was doing, so you were able to fill in nicely here, and there's some great trades in here. So we'll pull up the Chicago Cubs first. And yes, I did deliver for you, Praz. I decided that I was going to trade Yohan Moncada. Yohan Moncada and some money. We're going to send $10 million along with Yohan Moncada to the Cubs. And we're getting Alexander Canario. So basically this is almost like a salary dump. Canario has power, and he does play left field. He is out of options, Chorizy. He's the type of guy that he needs to be on someone's roster. This is not the Rays not having 40-man room. This is a dude who he's either on your roster or he's out there floating around and anyone can get him. And so I kind of thought like the White Sox are primed for that, especially if they don't end up spending on anyone. Now, I don't think he's a defensive whiz from what I can tell, but he has a shit ton of power. And so this is the type of like, hey, we'll get Moncada's money off the books. We'll gamble and see if we can turn this kid into something. And if not, at least we save the money. And, I think Moncada's getting $24 million plus the $5 million buyout this year. I assume most teams will buy him out. So, the Cubs are getting a $19 million third baseman. And they could use it. They made a trade at the deadline for Candelario, who's now a free agent. That spot is kind of open for the Cubs. And so, until they get some more prospects to fill in, I thought maybe this was a good idea.
I like dumping that money. I mean, I think why not, right? I mean, like he fits their roster, and he's a good defender. They have some hitting. Make it work, and I don't think you're giving up a lot from the Cubs side. So I think that there's a way to make that feel right, and I think giving the $10 million on top of it, like $14 million for a third baseman, is not out of this world, especially a guy who could field as well as Moncada. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it feels like the Cubs are getting a little bit of an upside play, right? It's expensive for a 1 year, but if you get a healthy Moncada, you're going to get 3.5 wins out of that, or 4 wins or whatever the fuck. Now, you probably won't. You probably get a half year. You'll probably get, a win and a half or 2 or something like that. But still decent, for a spot you just don't have someone, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you got guys that get hit. So, like, I mean, there's bats in that lineup. So it's not as much pressure on him to be the great hitter that the Sox need him to be because, like, he's probably going to be, like, leading off this year.
Right, exactly. All right, next up is the Cardinals. Chorizy, take it away.
Man, I had trouble with the Cardinals, too. They're again in that range of, like, okay, they've got their eyes on winning in 2024, and they also didn't do anything this year.
Right.
And then they've got a few guys with big contracts. Those are their best guys. So like
right.
It's not like they're moving them. The only glut that they have is second base, and they kind of have a second base glut. So like Brendan Donovan and Nolan Gorman, they're both playing second base. I don't know how good of a second baseman either one of them are. Tommy Edman's the best second baseman on the team. Right now, he's probably, if you look at like roster resource, he's like set up to play shortstop, which he can totally play.
Yeah.
But I think for the Cardinals and their fans at least, think of him as a utility guy. And so, honestly, he comes over to the Sox, he's the starting shortstop day one. And so, right. So I went with a little bit like I went through a couple guys that were doing blogs for them, and they were like looking for starting pitching, but kind of high risk, high reward stuff that they didn't have to pay a lot for. Right. And this kind of fits it. It kind of fits like Kopech. You don't know what you're going to get right now, but you could get a really good pitcher out of this. You might just get, a guy who you want to put in the bullpen. It's unknown. We're years into the Kopech experience, and it's unknown what he is. But if they feel like they can do something with him, if they feel like they understand what's going on there and they can address it, I mean, Tommy Edman's probably cheap to pay for Kopech. If they think it's a really high volatility play, Tommy Edman's probably priced right.
Yeah, Yeah, I think it is actually priced right. This is an interesting trade, and this is, you know what? It's funny about this trade. This is getting Tommy Edman like this is like what they think they'd be getting from like Whit Merrifield, except Whit Merrifield's 35, and I'm ready to break down. Like, you know, this is a guy who's much younger, and so like, yeah, this is a guy who can move around and play a lot of different positions. You're right; he would probably be a primary shortstop at least to start. Easily can move out of the way if Colson Montgomery arrives, and it's like, okay, we're going to give Colson Montgomery a shortstop. He can move the second. He can back up and play some center field when you need him to. Like the Cardinals were kind of shifty with throwing guys randomly in the outfield as well, and he was one of the guys that they would just like throw out there and it can use at a lot of spots. And the Sox, I'm sure, would love to do that. I mean, Tony La Russa was doing that shit with like Danny Mendick or whatever, and like, you know, just out of need. And so having a guy like this on the roster would be extremely helpful. I'm at the point with Kopech. He could be anything. He might even be the Kopech we thought he was going to be, but he also might be garbage. I have no idea what's going to turn out with Kopech. You know, that's why he's one of those guys where I could see him in all these trades. I could also see him in Chicago making 29 starts and being great. Like I have no idea where it lands. You know.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like you could, if you're an opposing fan base, you can have a lot of different opinions on a guy like that, because you could look at it and go like, the Sox can't develop anybody. So it's not shocking that they didn't figure this out. Right. And I feel like my team can figure things like this out. Yeah. So I would want him. So I don't know.
There's some ego to it. I agree with you 100%. All right, next trade up is Cincinnati Reds. Chorizy, go.
Yeah, so Cincinnati, I started out looking at Jonathan India, because Jonathan India is definitely on the block.
Yep.
Definitely a guy that's like out there that can be had at the right price. I think Kopech is low for Jonathan India.
Yep, I agree with you.
And if you go up to Cease, because these are the only two levers you have for starting pitching, and you look at the Reds' offense, we ain't helping them, right? And so
yeah,
they're trying to win right now. They have a young team. They have a payroll of like $47. It is unreal.
Yeah, they should be out there spending. Yeah.
And this seems like a scenario where they could bring in a Dylan Cease and extend him right away if they like him.
Yep.
Right? And talk to Scott Boras, give him a bunch of money. They got the room for it. They could totally do it. Or they could let the contract ride out, see what they got, and then decide what they do at that point. So coming back to the Sox though. So Cam Collier, he's a Chicago kid, which is cool. But he's also third baseman, top 100 prospect. Got a bat.
Yep.
The kind of guy that could be up in a couple of years and be playing in Chicago. He's nowhere near ready right now.
Yeah, he's young. He's almost 19, so he's a young kid. Yep.
And then you've got Chase Petty, and Chase Petty beef is along the lines of what we were talking about earlier. A guy who could throw real damn hard. And he's still sticking as a
starter.
He's still sticking as a starter.
Yeah.
It's unclear if he's going to be a starter, but like he's stuck so far. So why not see if you could get something really great out of him? And then I'm gonna mess up this guy's last name. I didn't even look up how to say it, but Daniel Vayohin? I don't know.
Looks right.
But he's a catcher. But he's Rule 5 eligible. And so that 40 man is clogging up real fast on the Reds, because they just have a lot of young talent. Yep. And they got to protect a lot of it. And getting one guy that they don't have to protect into a trade where they could get someone that they really want, it seems like a no-brainer. So I think that this is a solid package. Like, this would help the White Sox in the long run. You're giving up right now, though. You're like,
yeah, there's no immediate help in this group right here.
Better, I mean, you might, if you do this trade, you might trade Robert too.
Right, exactly. Now, just looking up Petty real quick, it doesn't look like he has major command problems. So he doesn't have the walk problems that you would think from a fireballer like that. And truth be told, that might be a breath of fresh air for the White Sox to get in one of those guys that's not a five walks per 9 innings or whatever.
One of the concerns was that in order to get his control in place, he did dip velocity quite a bit.
Okay.
And so obviously, like, you hear like, oh, this guy throws 102 miles per hour, and it's like, well, when he's pitching as a starter, it's 94. So there's some variance there, right? But the idea is that he can ramp back up and be like a 97 mile per hour thrower as a starter, which I'll take. I'll take
Yeah.
that all day.
Yeah, there's no question. But you're right. It's a young group. It's almost 19 for Collier. Petty is 20 and a half. And then your catcher there. Their catcher there is closer to the majors. Catchers take longer. He's 23 and a half. But, like, yeah, there's none of these guys are plugged into the lineup tomorrow. None of these guys are going to be on 35th Street when we open it, when we have the lid lifter in April. It's not happening with any of those guys. But I like that deal, actually. I think that's probably the most real. That's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck if they're willing to go like that. If they're willing to go younger and say, okay, these people are further away, they got more risk. I think that's how you're going to get the most bang for your buck for Dylan Cease. That's just my personal opinion. All right, next trade is the Pirates.
Beef. This is the worst trade partner for the White Sox.
It looks like it.
I went through every player in their organization, and like either guys are way too expensive for the capital that we have, or are not worth even bringing in. And so I ended up in the same situation I was with the Nationals last year, where I'm like, what guy might just get non-tendered? And Bailey Falter's an interesting one because Bailey Falter, starting pitcher, lefty, I believe.
He's lefty and he's out of options.
He's out of options. He didn't pitch that well last year. They traded for him last year. And the piece that interested me the most was that despite his not great year, he actually pushed up his ground ball rate higher than it had been in his career, and almost to 40%.
Nice.
Not like 40% ground ball rate is not like, oh man, we got a Dallas Keuchel on our hands. But like it is good in guaranteed rate field. So I kind of like that. And then since he was traded for utility guy, I figured let's trade a utility guy for him. Yeah. And we have one in Romy Gonzalez. And I think Pedro Gaffal would cry quite a bit to lose his one of his best friends on the planet, Romy Gonzalez. But I think it's a reasonable person to throw out there and say, give me this pitcher that I don't know if you were going to keep anyways.
Another man's junk, that sort of thing. I love it so much. I'm going to be honest with you. The comments, are lit up on this one. Missy says, excuse me on that one. And that Getz loves Romy. She can feel it for sure. I'm not sure. I don't think Getz loves anyone on this roster. He basically said the roster fucking stinks. Prez, nice job. I did say lid lifter, and that is a Danny Mackism. Teresa, these are the types of moves I wish the White Sox would do more of. Just flip out some stuff. Just try some shit. During the Hahn era, there was always so much room to do this, especially even before they got good. And then once they got good, unlock some of these pieces. Make a trade. Try something. When Ken Williams was the GM and he was in charge, he did this shit every year. And then Hahn was the opposite. He got scaredy wang. He never tried any of this stuff. So I hope that Getz gets back to being a little more transactional. And truth be told, watching that last deadline, the one thing that doesn't seem to be broken is the White Sox trade module when it comes to like trading off current talent for future talent. So let's do some shit. This one is more of a current for current, end of the roster for end of the roster. But let's gamble a little bit. What the fuck? I mean, we need the pitching so bad. We got 50 Romy Gonzalez's. We got a bunch of guys who strike out a bunch, run real fast, all that shit.
We have almost no Bailey Falters. We have like the left-handed pitching that's close to the major leagues is nowhere. Like there's not much of it.
It's suspect. All right, last trade from this group, the Milwaukee Brewers. This might be my favorite one in the whole group.
Let's get nuts, guys. Let's get nuts. Because every blog you're reading out there that talks about trade rumors, they've got the Brewers being open for business. They got a lot of guys coming into their last year of their contracts. So you got like Willie Adames and Corbin Burns. And those are probably the guys that are going to get targeted more. We don't really have what it takes to get those guys.
No, we do not.
And we don't really want a guy that's here for a year. Like that doesn't really make sense for the Sox. So what I looked at was like, let's say those guys start going. Christian Yelich then makes up like a quarter of their payroll.
Yep.
And so if if they're really trying to revamp this team, Yelly don't make sense there. That does not make sense for them paying him like $26 million in a year or whatever it is. So why not put together a package of players to kind of, if they're looking to build up the farm system and looking to get rid of some contract, this might be perfect. And it's a good fit for the Sox too. Yelich would probably play right field for the Sox, even though he's probably not as good of a right fielder as a left fielder, but he's the best right fielder we've had in a while.
Yep.
But he gets on base an insane amount. Like, I think it was like 370 last year. He was
absolutely was.
350 most of his 350 most of his career.
Yeah, he's a career 376. But you're right. He had a couple bumped years where he was above 400. Those were like the Yelich MVP style years where he's above 7 wins.
Juice ball years.
Ball years. He hit a bunch of home runs to help that. But even last year, you're right. 370 is worth 4 wins. 4.1 F4. So like absolutely really fucking nice year for Christian Yelich. He's aging well so far. I expect him to. He doesn't strike out a lot. He's a good walk rate guy. This is a good good bat to ball as well.
Ton of doubles. Probably still hit you about 20 home runs, especially in our park.
Yep.
And I think the money for Yelich prohibits him from really getting a huge prospect in return. Like Montgomery doesn't headline this because it's such an expenditure through his year 36 season.
Yep.
So I think that, a larger package with like Schultz headlining, you give another pitcher in Jake Eater, you give our first round pick from last year in Jacob Gonzalez, and then you throw a couple lottery tickets at him like Tanner McDougal, Yelky Cespedes. I just want to put Yelky Cespedes in one trade this year.
I was going to say, his name doesn't even light up because they don't consider him a real player anymore.
You know what? It's every site spells his name differently.
It's a spelling.
Every site spells his name differently. I took the Fangraph spelling and then tried to link it to Baseball Reference. It broke. But I think that it's a bulk trade. But it's top end heavy. Like you're getting a bunch of our good prospects in this trade, and I think you get back though your right fielder. That position's done. You're set finally.
It's locked down. Let's get to a drink. Nathan Chiba says, so going back to the Cubs are going to win another series with Moncada and Madrigal. Just drown me in Wrigley's stainless urinal trough right now. Thank you. I actually urinated in the trough for that football game, and I wasn't able to peek on anyone. Everyone was real tight. They were protected. So that's a football crowd right there. Thank you, Nathan. And then Press says that Kristen Yelich's mom's a gilf. Hope this happens to just satisfy me. I was aware of this. I didn't want to come out here and say this. I'll bring the trade back up for a second. I think the trade's too heavy. And the reason why I think it's too heavy is because of the contract situation, Treasy. And now he's been good, but like if I were making this trade, I would definitely lop off Schultz because I think Schultz at this point after the year he had, even though he didn't have a lot of innings, he was pretty dominant. I think he's going to end up a top 100 prospect kind of everywhere. And then I would pick either Eater or Gonzalez to throw in here, and then the other two guys. Actually, I would probably pick Eater or Gonzalez and get rid of the other one, and then I would upgrade Yoki Cespedes because I know you want him in here, but no one wants Yoki Cespedes.
I just wanted to say him.
And
I wanted him to be a part of this. I think he was such a big part of previous years. He needed to be a part of this.
The best is he's only like 5'8" or something like that. He's so short. But I think like it's kind of a doable situation. Like I think they would trade him. I think they're the type of team where getting the money off the payroll in the short term and kind of turning the whole thing over. It looks like that's what they're trying. I mean, if Craig Counsell's leaving, they're at the point where they got to flip it over. They got to start some shit over again. Like they just can't keep going with this group. So I think it makes sense to go after a trade like this. And I love the idea of Yelich. I think we've had Yelich in these plans a couple times. He's just a nice fit for us. And even if he sucks, he's still worth two wins. Like even his bad years, it's like, he's worth 1.7 wins and he had 11% walk rate. Okay, we'll take that. That's good. That's great for us. Like what we had in right field last year, that's a 4-win upgrade. I mean, that's just so much better for us.
To me, this was the kind of trade that if they went and did this like at the winter meetings, right? Like early December, you make this trade, free agents realize, okay, they're trying to do something here. They're trying to be a team again.
Yep.
They should be on my list of teams to consider. So I think that's if you truly want to compete next year, this is the kind of move you make. This is the kind of move you go, no, we were serious. We're going to turn this around fast.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Chorizy-E, thanks so much for working on these trades again with me this year. Videos. This is 4 years running. We're the White Sox Twitter industry leader, I'll say, even though I have no clue if that's actually true. But I know that we do it, and I don't think anyone else actually does it. Remember, we ain't trying to be right on the show. We're just trying to understand. Next week's guest is fucking nothing. I'll be out of here. I'm going off for Thanksgiving break for the whole week, so there'll be no au jus. We'll probably be back on the 27th. No guest booked yet. We may do something else then. Thanks to all the 108 family that was up in the YouTube comments. Appreciate you smashing the like button, comments, and of course the drinks. Those drinks are important. That's how we get paid, and that's how we get laid, according to Chorizy.